I never thought I'd feel invisible in my own marriage. 38 years old, my career thriving, my friends supportive. Yet at home, I was background noise. When I walked into our kitchen that morning, I found the note on the counter, written in his sloppy handwriting. I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving for someone who makes me feel young again. Don't try to find me. I stared at it, my fingers trembling. Coffee in my hand, steam fogging my glasses, and the smell of it, burnt and bitter, suddenly mirrored the knot twisting in my chest. My husband of 15 years had chosen a woman 25 years younger than me, and in that instant, I felt both rage and a deep, hollow sadness. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I sank into the chair, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock. It was like the whole world had paused, waiting for me to break. And then I realized something. I was not going to beg. Not for him, not for anyone. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over his contact. Part of me wanted to call, scream, demand answers. But instead, I scrolled through my calendar, plotting the first move he wouldn't see coming, the first act of defiance that would leave everyone speechless. I smiled quietly, almost sinister in the calmness that spread through me. He thought leaving me would hurt me. He thought it would be my end. He had no idea. I didn't waste a second feeling sorry for myself. I went straight to the salon, the one I had avoided for months because I didn't have time. The stylist barely recognized me when I walked in. "New color?" she asked. I nodded, but it wasn't just the color. I was reinventing myself in every stroke, every snip. Dark, glossy curls framed my face, highlighting eyes that suddenly felt sharp again. Next, I hit the boutique district downtown. I let the saleswoman pick outfits she thought would turn heads. Every blouse, every dress hugged me differently. Every heel clicked with intention. I felt the power of movement again. The sway of my shoulders, the lift in my chest, the confidence in my stride. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like the woman in the background of my own life. I felt like the main character. That evening, I decided to host a small dinner party. Friends only. Casual, no pretenses. But it wasn't casual. It was a statement. I wanted to be seen, really seen, and to let the world witness that I was not broken, not fading, not irrelevant. As my friends arrived, I noticed the subtle glances, the impressed smiles. I had become magnetic without even trying. And then, as the wine flowed and laughter bounced off the walls, I saw his car pull up outside. My heart skipped, but I stayed seated, calm, poised. He had come to gloat, or maybe to see if I had crumbled. But I didn't get up. I just smiled, raised my glass, and whispered to my friend, "Watch this." He walked through the door like he owned the place. That smug, arrogant smirk plastered across his face. My pulse quickened, not from fear, but anticipation. He froze for a split second, taking in the scene. Friends clustered around the dining table, candles flickering, laughter still echoing. And then he saw me. I stood slowly, deliberately, feeling every inch of my new posture, every curve highlighted by the dress I'd chosen. My hair fell perfectly around my shoulders, dark and shiny. My eyes met his, calm and unwavering, and I smiled. A smile that didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't plead for attention. It was a smile that said, "I am here, I am unstoppable, and you missed it." He opened his mouth, probably to apologize, to justify, to charm, but I didn't give him the satisfaction. I raised my glass and toasted to my friends, my independence, my life. "To new beginnings," I said. Every word dripped with confidence, with the quiet fury of someone who refuses to be diminished. The first sting of panic flashed across his face. He had expected brokenness, tears, begging. Instead, he saw strength, real, unapologetic strength, and it threw him off balance. He tried again. "Can we talk?" His voice wavered. For the first time in years, I didn't flinch. "No," I said, calm but firm. "You already made your choice." And then I did the thing he least expected. I invited him to join us, not as a husband, not as a victim of my heartbreak, but as a witness. I asked my friends to help me serve dinner, to keep the energy lively, to make sure the room radiated life, not pity. As he lingered awkwardly, I let myself enjoy it, the way the room buzzed, how everyone's attention was on me, how he had no foothold, no power. The humiliation wasn't cruel. It was subtle, effortless. It was the quiet assertion of someone who had been underestimated for far too long. By the time dessert was served, he realized he couldn't reclaim anything from me. I was already moving forward, savoring life in a way he could never take away. I laughed with my friends, the sound rich and free, and noticed him slip out quietly. No confrontation, no apologies, just the slow understanding that he had lost more than he realized. I didn't feel vindictive. I felt victorious. I had taken the first step, not to punish him, but to reclaim myself. The silence he left behind was heavy with his regret, and for the first time, I tasted the sweetness of empowerment. This was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight spilling across the bedroom, warm and golden. It should have felt ordinary, but it didn't. Everything felt sharper, more vivid. I could smell the faint aroma of my coffee downstairs, hear the muffled laughter of my friends from last night, and most importantly, I could feel it, the weight of freedom settling onto my shoulders like a well-fitted coat. I poured myself a cup and stood by the window, watching the neighborhood wake up, families rushing to school buses, joggers with earbuds, neighbors waving. It was normal, mundane, yet for me, every little detail felt like a victory. I wasn't invisible anymore, not in my own home, not in my own life. I decided to take it further. I signed up for a photography class downtown, a long-shot passion I'd shelved years ago, the kind of place buzzing with creativity, energy, people who didn't know my past or my marriage or the heartbreak I'd endured. Here I was just me, capable, curious, alive. The first class was intimidating. A room full of 20-somethings, camera straps slung across shoulders, conversations buzzing with inside jokes I didn't understand. I felt my insecurities rise, but I refused to let them anchor me. I smiled, walked confidently to an empty seat, and introduced myself. My voice was steady, my eyes bright. Some heads turned, curiosity, maybe admiration. By the end of the lesson, I had captured a perfect shot of the city skyline, the way the light hit the buildings just right, the reflection in the river below. When the instructor praised my eye for composition, I felt a rush of pride that had nothing to do with anyone else, just me and the work I had created. Later, walking home, I ran into someone I hadn't expected. Him. He leaned against his car, phone in hand, and his jaw was tight. "I didn't expect to see you here," he said, the words faltering. I didn't falter. "I don't expect to see you," I replied evenly, letting the confidence in my tone speak louder than any argument. But life goes on. He nodded as if realizing in that moment that he had lost more than just a wife. He had lost the woman who would no longer revolve around his decisions. And as I walked past him, the crisp air brushing my face, I felt it fully. The exhilarating power of reclaiming yourself. This was more than a victory over a failed marriage. This was the beginning of a life rebuilt on my own terms, one choice at a time, and I was just getting started. It had been a few weeks since that morning of silent victory, but I could still feel the ripple of change in everything I did. I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving. My friends noticed it. My colleagues noticed it, and yes, he noticed it. He showed up at the gallery where my photography class was hosting an exhibit of student work. I didn't see him at first, too absorbed in adjusting a frame, perfecting the lighting, watching people react to the images. My photographs captured life in ways that felt raw and true, moments he could never replicate because they came from me, fully alive, fully aware. And then I felt it, the sudden shift of energy, the tensing of a familiar presence. I turned slowly and saw him standing by the entrance, his younger girlfriend nowhere in sight. His eyes scanned the room and landed on me. I held his gaze. Not a flicker of fear, not a hint of regret. Just a woman who had taken control of her life and refused to be anyone's shadow. He cleared his throat, awkward, hesitant. "I didn't know you'd be showcasing your work," he said, voice low. I smiled. A slow, deliberate curve of lips that said more than words ever could. "I didn't know I'd need to show it to you," I replied. "But here I am. It feels good to finally create for myself." People began to gather, noticing the tension between us. I could see whispers, sideways glances, and that's when I realized he had underestimated the extent of my transformation. He hadn't just lost me, he had underestimated the woman I was becoming. I walked past him deliberately, letting the rustle of my dress and the confident click of my heels announce my presence. The gallery echoed with compliments from friends and strangers alike. Every word, every smile I received was a quiet dagger to his ego. He opened his mouth again, but no words came out. By the time I left the exhibit, he was still standing there, frozen in a mixture of awe and regret. And as I stepped out into the cool night air, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement, I felt an overwhelming surge of freedom. He had tried to break me, tried to diminish me, but instead he had only pushed me toward becoming stronger, brighter, unstoppable. For the first time in years, I felt like the world was wide open, like the past was a distant shadow, and every step I took was mine alone. And I knew this was only the beginning. A few days later, I got the idea that would truly leave everyone speechless. I decided to host a brunch, not just any brunch, but one that would bring together everyone who mattered in our social circle. Friends, colleagues, even some of the people he had used to flaunt his new life. I wanted them to see me, not bitter, not broken, but radiant, confident, and untouchable. The morning of the brunch, the smell of fresh-baked croissants and roasted coffee beans filled my apartment. I moved around with a calm energy, setting the table, placing flowers just so, arranging everything with deliberate care. My hair was perfectly styled, my outfit bold but elegant. Every detail screamed, "I am here and I am thriving." When guests arrived, I noticed his hesitation immediately. He lingered at the door, unsure if he should step in, and then I saw it. His girlfriend, vibrant and young, a picture of confidence, or what she thought was confidence. She didn't know what she was walking into. I greeted everyone warmly, laughter flowing naturally. As the conversation turned to updates and stories, I casually mentioned my photography class, showing a few prints I had brought along. The room fell silent for a moment as people admired my work. Then came the murmurs of admiration, the compliments, the wide-eyed glances. He tried to interject, tried to claim attention, but it was impossible. Every eye was on me. Every laugh, every word of praise, every approving glance was a reminder that I had not only survived, I had flourished. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. I invited everyone to step onto the balcony where I had arranged a slideshow of my photographs from the past month, capturing moments of joy, strength, and resilience. As the images flickered across the screen, the narrative was undeniable. This was a life fully lived, a woman fully reclaimed. I watched him as realization dawned on him. He had thought leaving me would diminish me, erase me, make me small. Instead, every gesture, every photo, every laugh was a declaration. I had moved on, I had grown, and he was irrelevant to the woman I had become. By the end of brunch, he slipped away quietly, defeated without confrontation. And as I watched him leave, I felt a rush of triumph unlike anything I had experienced before. This was not vengeance. This was empowerment. This was life reclaimed, fully and unapologetically. I sank into my chair, sipping the last of my coffee, surrounded by friends, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of someone who had turned heartbreak into a stage for her own triumph. I was no longer a character in his story. I was the author of my own. Weeks passed and life began to settle into a rhythm that was entirely mine. The ache of betrayal still flickered from time to time, a reminder of what I had endured, but it no longer controlled me. Each morning, I woke up feeling lighter, more in tune with who I had become. I started running again, feeling the burn in my legs and the rush of air in my lungs. The city streets, once dull and monotonous, now pulsed with energy, alive with opportunity and possibility. I threw myself into my photography, capturing scenes that spoke to my soul. Children playing in the park, sunlight filtering through the autumn leaves, strangers laughing at the corner cafe. Every click of the shutter was a declaration. I existed and I mattered. One evening, I met someone at the gallery, a kind, attentive man who noticed the depth behind my eyes, the stories I carried without words. We talked for hours about art, travel, ambitions, dreams. There was no rush, no need to fill silence with pretense. With him, I felt seen in a way that was quiet, profound, and completely different from the hollow attention I had once craved from my ex. Then unexpectedly, my ex reached out. A text. "Can we talk?" I read it once, then again, and felt a flicker of amusement. For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but instead, I typed carefully, "There's nothing to talk about. I hope you find what you're looking for. I've found mine." I sent it, feeling an immense weight lift off my chest. The freedom in those words was intoxicating. He had hoped for drama, perhaps confrontation, maybe even reconciliation. Instead, he got closure, the kind that came not from tears or begging, but from calm, unshakable confidence. Later that night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, the city lights reflecting like stars below. I thought about the past months, the heartbreak, the betrayal, the strategy, the transformation. Every step had been deliberate, every choice a brick in the foundation of a new life. I wasn't defined by his actions or his absence. I was defined by my own courage, my own vision, and the joy I chose to cultivate. As I leaned back, letting the warm breeze brush my face, I realized something profound. I had not just survived. I had created a life that was richer, fuller, and more vibrant than I had imagined possible. And the most beautiful part? I was just getting started. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of freshly baked bread from the corner bakery. I walked down the street with my camera slung over my shoulder, the strap warm against my skin. Every step felt purposeful, grounded and free. It had been months since the divorce, months since the humiliation and heartbreak that had once seemed unbearable. But now, it was just a chapter, a necessary one that had led me here. I stopped at the park, the city buzzing faintly around me, and lifted my camera. Children ran past, their laughter pure and unrestrained. A couple shared a quiet moment on a bench. The sunlight caught the dew on the grass, turning it into tiny diamonds. I snapped the shot, capturing the fleeting beauty of life in motion. And then I saw him, my ex, standing across the park, clearly waiting. But this time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel fear. I felt something else entirely, pity, tempered with calm amusement. He had tried to diminish me, to erase me from his life, to replace me with youth and superficial charm. And yet here I was, thriving, radiant, unshakable. He opened his mouth, probably to apologize, to explain, to try again. I didn't wait for him. I walked past him, head held high, every sense attuned to the present, not the past. His words died in the space between us, and I realized that closure didn't come from his recognition. It came from my own unwavering strength. I wandered further into the park, spotting my friend from the photography class waiting near the fountain. She waved and I waved back, hearts swelling with gratitude and joy. We spent the afternoon exploring angles, light and shadows, laughing, sharing insights, capturing moments that spoke to our souls. The camera became a lens not just for the world, but for my own rebirth. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long golden rays across the water, I sat on the fountain's edge and breathed deeply. I had been abandoned, underestimated, and betrayed, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and fully alive. I had turned heartbreak into art, pain into power, and loss into freedom. And in that moment, I understood the ultimate truth. Life is not about the people who leave you behind. It's about the woman you become when you choose yourself. I smiled, feeling the warmth of accomplishment and possibility settle over me like sunlight. I had won, not by fighting, not by proving him wrong, but by reclaiming my life in a way that left the world and myself breathless. This was my triumph, my story, my victory, and it was only the beginning.